Hey everybody, welcome back. Just hanging out in the boat here, playing with the outboard, imagining ripping up a river this summer. I was just watching one of my old videos and I found a clip that I hadn't posted before. I didn't feel comfortable posting it. It was just me rambling on about gold mining for about 20 minutes, talking about fine gold recovery and sort of the technical aspects of using the dream mat that I was using this summer. So I looked at it, I figured it might be helpful to somebody might find it interesting. So if you're interested in a little bit more technical discussion, less of the camping and fun stuff, it's just one uncut clip of me yammering on about fine gold recovery. Stick around, I'm making the video longer than it needs to be by rambling on right now. So let's get right to it, enjoy the video. Hello. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my honest assessment, reasonably thorough, of Dream Mat's recovery of fine Alberta gold. If you're new to the channel, what I'm doing is I bought a 1997 Sea-Doo and somehow I managed to shoehorn in a tent, sleeping bag and sleeping pad into the front. I've got my Sluice box sitting on the back, as well as a WX-15 Honda water pump. I've gone on, this is my fourth trip, so I did a 3-day trip, a 2-day trip, a 3-day trip, and this is day 3 of a 4-day trip. I've put a lot of shovels and a decent amount of gold over this matting. I've done a lot of different experiments of how well it recovers, and I'm basically going to tell you what percentage of gold I'm catching, what percentage of gold I think I'm losing, what I've done to get this dialed in, and my overall opinion of the matting. Would I use it again, and do I intend to continue using it at the end of the year or for the rest of the year? So first of all, the setup. What I have, it is a 12-inch wide sluice. It is a total of 36 inches, 3 feet of recovery, and the box is 42 inches long, so there's about a 6-inch slick plate at the head of the box. I am using a Alaskan damper, and for my screen up here, let me show you, get my face out of the camera here. I am using a 1/8 inch mesh. For the beginning of the season, I was using a 3/16. So this is 1/16 smaller than I was using before. The box, now this has not been run dry, so it looks a little bit full, but if I shut the water off after about 30 seconds, it cleans out a little bit better than this. It's all very fine in there. I was having some issues with recovery and with the slightly larger size mesh, the 3/16. I thought that might have been my issue. Turns out most of the issue was just bigger rocks getting in around the edge, and this smaller screen is tricky to keep up with making sure it stays clean while I'm digging, so I may switch that up. How do you actually know how much gold you're catching and how much gold you are losing? With any scientific experiment, you have 3 variables. There are your controlled variables, your uncontrolled variables, and the dependent variable, or what you're actually trying to find out. A controlled variable would be anything along the lines of like pretty much everything. So you could go so far as to say, what temperature was it? What was the barometric pressure? At what elevation were you running? All of these things aren't really going to affect this, but there are a huge amount of controlled variables that you want to keep as controlled as possible. The uncontrolled variables are, what type of ground am I working? Certain rivers have coarser flakes, certain rivers have finer flakes. The speed at which I'm shoveling, for example, whether I throw a giant shovel in all at once or whether I sort of put a half shovel in, hold my shovel there, filter through the material slowly, how much water I'm pumping through the box, and what slope the sluice matting is at. Those 2 variables are kind of what I'm changing, is what's the slope, what's the water flow. My shoveling is, you throw a shovel in, wait till it looks like it's kind of cleaned out and you've got clear water through the sluice, flowing through the sluice, and then you throw your next shovel in. the rate of shoveling is sort of what I'm actually using while I'm out here gold mining. The way I actually test for this is very important, because if you have an empty sluice map and you do this exact test, it's going to be very different than if you have, say, 300 shovels and a decent amount of gold in there, and then you do this test. The way gold works is it will start up at the top of the box. Let's have a look. Again, this is too full of material right now. I throw a big sandy scoop in and then go shut it off immediately, just to try to prevent the scouring action when I'm running it empty. So you can definitely see there's a little bit of gold in some corners there. But basically what happens is you will get gold that gets caught at the top of the box, and then if you just, between shovels, every time it sort of runs out a little bit, it will sort of hop to the next cell, to the next cell, to the next cell, and slowly work its way down the box. And that is why if you have a completely empty box, you put a tub down at the bottom and you throw a shovel in. I've even seen somebody do it where they just took gold all by itself, and they said, look how much gold the dream mat can hold. Dump a bunch of gold in, that's great, it can hold a lot of gold. There's nothing else in the box. I got a way better mat for you. It's called a bucket. Pour some water into a bucket, dump all your gold in the bucket. Look how much gold this holds. But it's got to exchange out with black sand and everything. So what I've been doing is I'll start seeing black sand coming out the tailings after like 10 shovels. It's full of black sand at that point, and it's designed to exchange out that black sand. So at the end of 100 shovels, I will basically do this. And I don't have a cameraman, so I'm going to just reenact it. I will throw a shovel in the top of the box, have it, all cleaned out and dumped down. Then the second it's essentially out of the hopper, I will come down here, I will take this empty tub, and I will throw it underneath my sluice. That is now catching everything that's coming through. I then grab another shovel, dump it in the top, clean it all out, and that's at the same pace that I would normally shovel. So that whatever that feed rate is, it's trying to replicate that. Then I come down here, I pull the tub out and I dump it into a gold pan right away. And then I throw it back under the box like that. During the 2 or 3 minutes it takes me to go take my gold pan, I will pan everything out and see what came through with that one shovel, sort of steady feed rate. That is how I calculate sort of the running efficiency. So if I put 100 colors in that shovel and I see one color out here, that would be a 99% efficiency. If I see 20 colors out here, now we're looking at an 80% efficiency. The next step is, while I was panning, then once I'm done my pan, I'll turn off the pump and I will empty this. So while it's not being fed for 3 minutes, how much gold is sort of scouring out of the box as it slowly cleans out. The cells, filter out all the gold. What am I losing when it's just running empty? The fact of the matter is, you will run your box empty sometimes. Whether you go grab a bite to eat, drink a glass of water, get distracted with something. I try not to just run this thing constantly, but I do want to know, if I run this thing empty, what am I losing? Because different mats work differently as far as running them empty. That was the other part of the test. Now, as far as that steady state efficiency goes, I wasn't doing particularly well when I started out, and I was running the box at a shallower angle. If you run this box at about a 7-degree slope, it will capture that gold just fine, but you need to baby it. You need to just basically spoon in your material. That's more of a cleanup setup. What I'm looking to do is actual bank run shoveling. Throwing a shovel in, waiting a little bit, throwing a shovel in. To do that, I ended up increasing the slope to about 11 degrees. One thing to consider is, for the scientific experiment part of this, if you start at 8 degrees, do 100 shovels, and then see how much is scouring out the bottom of the box when it's running empty, and then you turn it up to 10 degrees, and you just put the box there to see, you're going to get a bunch coming out there, and it's an unfair experiment. You actually need to start at 10 degrees and then test it at 10 degrees. Because if you're running at 8 degrees, all the cells will be, rather than having the gold sort of tucked right into the cells, there will be gold sort of spread out a little bit. And then when you increase that slope, that spread out gold will sort of work its way down the box. So to be fair, I did each one of these slope tests separately. So for 10 degrees, I started at 10 degrees, I did 100 shovels, I took my gold pen, and then I saw what was in there after about 3 minutes of letting it scour. When I got to 12 degrees, I wasn't happy with what was coming out the bottom when it was just sitting there scouring. So I would say anything between 10 and 11 degrees is best for what I'm shoveling right now. And the other thing is I do have to slightly baby this box. The material I'm shoveling right here, this is very sandy stuff. So the amount of material that's actually going to go through the box is a lot compared to what's coming out this bottom end. If it's mainly bigger gravel, then less is actually going to be going into that bed load of the sluice. That's another consideration, and I'm keeping that in mind. So depending on where I'm doing the test and how I'm doing it, is if it's sandy like this, I will shovel slower just to make sure I'm actually catching something. So where I'm settled into is somewhere between 10 and 11 degrees is my best shoveling efficiency. And the scouring at the end, I don't like it, but it's manageable to the point where I may lose an entire shovel's worth of gold or two during those 3 minutes of running empty. But I typically don't run it empty. I do that steady state thing. So to the point, what percentage of gold am I capturing with the 1/8 inch screen and setting it up, running properly, good amount of water flow over everything? I would say, now if I did this after 25 shovels, the results look a lot better. But I just did another run. I'm at 300 shovels in the box, and I can honestly say, conservatively, I am keeping 80% of my gold. Which means that if I shovel 10 grams over the course of a whole trip, 2 grams are going to be in my tailings. That's more gold in my tailings than usually you might get in a hard day of shoveling. So it's a hard pill to swallow. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who say, hey, you're using it wrong. If you're losing 20% of your gold with Dream Mat, this is the new messiah. It's the best thing since sliced bread for catching gold. Not sure sliced bread is a good way to catch gold, guys. But I've given it a fair go, and I've held off talking about recovery up to this point. But let's think about this, and I can tell you right now, I do intend to continue using this for the rest of the year. And here's why. Right now, this sluice is 36 inches of recovery. That's it. Most of the guys, even the guys that sell this stuff, will have a much longer sluice, or possibly even a 9-foot sluice. The advantage to doing that is, of course, you will catch some of what's in your tailings. The advantage of this setup is that I will pretty much be able to catch as much gold as I can given the limitations of the Sea-Doo rig. The best recovery that I've ever had was with rough top conveyor belt. That's the stuff that is in the Gold Cube. You can buy it at various conveyor belt suppliers, and it's called rough top conveyor belt. You'll be able to find it if you're looking for it. What I was using, the best recovery I've ever had, is I shoveled 1,000 shovels in a really, really hot spot. Those 1,000 shovels, I was able to get 6 grams of gold at that spot, all on one cleanout. And my recovery was 24 inches wide by 5 feet long of rough top conveyor belt. It is very, very tricky to run that stuff. It has to have the perfect slope. I was using 5/8 of an inch. If I went to 1/2 inch, it was just painfully slow, but it would still work. If I went to 3/4 of an inch, I'd actually start losing some of that gold. I had to have it perfectly level left and right because it's 24 inches wide and you're just putting a little bit of water over it, just a film. So if it was slightly out of level, it would all pour to one side. I believe it was about 18 to 20 gallons per minute per foot of sluice width. So for the 24-inch wide sluice, I had about 35 gallons per minute flowing through that. But at the end of those 1,000 shovels, I put my box under, put my last shovel in, and let it run for 5 minutes. And I found about 30 colors. And that was, we're talking, there's about 400 colors per shovel at that point. So if you factor in letting it run plus the shovel, it was just phenomenal. I would find maybe 5 or 6 colors out of 400 colors if I did the steady state test. And it was amazing. And that would be what I recommend for fine Alberta gold. But that 24-inch wide sluice can handle about the same amount of material as this 12-inch wide sluice. So the Dream Mat is actually really, really good in terms of what it can handle. And I'm impressed with that. The other thing is cleanup. With the rough top conveyor, you need to scrub bubbles out of it when you start. And to clean it out, it just sticks in there. You really need to slosh everything around. This is just a dream to clean out. And I really like that. The other real advantage to this stuff is, again, given the size of my sluice, catching 80% is actually pretty good. Over miner's moss and the expanded on top, that is the gold standard, and I would absolutely recommend that to anyone starting out. But you get a huge amount of concentrates at the end of the day. This has very few concentrates. Also, very, very easy to clean out. And with the miner's moss, once it fills with black sand, and again, in a spot like this, I've just put 300 shovels through, this would be pretty much full of black sand. That perfect exchange really starts to drop off, and you will be losing gold out of that as well. So anyone that says, hey, I'm using miner's moss, expanded, I've got it set up perfect, I'm catching 100% of the gold. Based on the way I'm testing this, I'm being very mean to the matting. I'm running it after 300 shovels before I do this test, so it's had a lot of time to migrate down the box, and I'm seeing what's going on. You will absolutely lose gold out of miner's moss as well. I've definitely seen people who really know what they're doing are capturing a lot of gold, and they're just accepting the fact that you will lose gold at the end of the day. I really do like the stuff. I think that I can increase my recovery by slowing my feed rate. I'm not willing to shovel that slowly. So one thing I'm considering is putting a second level in here. That way it's still a compact box. You would split the water flow at the top. Then every shovel that goes in, rather than that big shovel just overwhelming your sluice, which is where a longer sluice would be helpful, if I had a second box, it would be like a half shovel into each level. That might be something I'll consider. I may also consider doing that 2-layer thing with the rough top conveyor belt. That way I'll still have a 24-inch wide recovery, except right at the very top of the box here, you would have a little scoop that kind of goes in. I might do like one here and one there. So it's like 3 holes for the bottom, 2 bigger holes for the top. And that would allow half the flow to go over a top box. If I did that with the rough top conveyor belt, I would still be able to feed at about the same rate, but I think I would have better recovery. It's just, it's harder to deal with this stuff, and I'm not really sure exactly what my approach is going to be. But right now, 80% is pretty good. I'm out here digging. That's the most important part. It's catch and release, ethical harvest. But I think just to get through the rest of the year, considering Sea-Doo, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I always spend way too much time fiddling with stuff rather than actually getting out and mining. So I'm just going to keep coming out and mining while I can. And as far as modifying this box, I'll save that for winter. Hopefully, where this channel can be helpful to people is I'm good at coming up with creative solutions to problems. So as I get this dialed in, as I come up with better ways to have a lightweight, compact box that will still catch all of the gold, like obviously just get a 12-foot sluice, put miner's moss in it, and carry 5-gallon buckets full of concentrates home. But I've never really been willing to do that. Even if I had a larger boat, it would just, I like fiddling around with little things like this. But what we're gonna do is For now, I'm going to use a Latrap Sluice. They are super, super light. I should be able to fit it upside down on top of this, so it'll still fit on the back of my Sea-Doo there. Right now, even if I put a second level in, I'm currently storing my hoses inside that box, which is why the sides of the box are so high. It doesn't need to be that high, but it allows me to actually use that for storage. So if I just take a Latrap Sluice and set it on top, then I'll at least know that I'm catching something out of my tailings. The Latrap Sluice is actually as a standalone sluice. If that's what you're using as a high banker, it's ultra light, it's cheap, and it catches Alberta fine gold phenomenally well. I've never done the, what I just talked about, where you put 100 shovels in and make sure you're doing the steady state and like being really tough on its recovery. So I can't tell you how good it does, but what I do know is it doesn't catch nuggets, not a problem here. And if you turn the water off and back on again, it doesn't like that. It sort of loses its bite on the gold, and then when you turn it back on again, it'll skip down a couple riffles before it gets caught again. With the Dream Mat, you want to shut off when you're not shoveling, and turning it on and off again is not a problem. That's another really good advantage of this. But having the Dream Mat with the Latrap underneath, every time I want to stop shoveling, I'm going to go turn off my pump, and that's not going to be good for the Latrap. But all I would do is I would take the Latrap from sitting down at the bottom. I wouldn't even have it hanging with legs or anything. It would just sort of sit on the ground and hopefully catch something. I would basically take that and just pour it back into my hopper, fire it back up again, and off I go. I'm hoping that that will help me capture something, and if I can get a hold of a Latrap Sluice, I'm not really sure where you buy them these days, I can actually do a test where I'll steady state, fill this thing up with 100 shovels, and then put the Latrap underneath it and do another 100 shovels and see how much is in the top box, how much is in the bottom box in real world, big sandy shovels dumped in all at once conditions. And we'll see exactly how good that is. This has probably been a very long rambling rant about gold mining and all sorts of exciting things. Sorry I'm unable to actually video this with a tripod, set it up and demonstrate. Here's the pan, here's a picture of this pan and that pan as proof to what I've said. I could just be making all of this up and lying, I know. But that's been my experience. You will catch 80% of the gold. Fair to say, pretty flexible, although if you run it too shallow and with not enough water, you're just going to be pumping gold right back into the river. So you do need to run it hard and a nice steep slope. At least 10 or 11 degrees, which is, I don't know how many inches per foot, but like 2 inches per foot would be like a good start point for shoveling out here. Hope this was helpful to somebody. And again, this is not shade towards Dream Mat. I like Dream Mat. I'm going to continue using the Dream Mat, and I'm really enjoying my experimentation with it. But 80% recovery, safe to say I'm getting at least 80% here in Alberta ultra fine gold in sort of adverse conditions. Take it or leave it. That's my opinion on the stuff. I like it, but it's not catching 110%. I'd like to see some of that 110% capture rate though. I'd just keep running the same gram over and over again until I was rich. That'd be great. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful to somebody, and I guess when I have a look back, I'll see how much rambling I did. Maybe I'll try to cut some of it out. But thank you for watching. Have a great day, guys.